What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another quality recipe video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make your very own sourdough starter from scratch. I figure since a lot of us are stuck in quarantine for who knows how much longer, what a better time to teach you and introduce you into the world of sourdough bread making. So you may ask yourself, what exactly is a sourdough starter? Well, basically it's a mixture of flour and water left at room temperature for around a week with constant feedings. More on that in a little bit. And what happens during this time is the wild yeasts found in the flour start to feed and convert the sugars also found in the flour into alcohol or carbon dioxide, which is essentially what rises the dough. Now, even though sourdough bread has really peaked in popularity in the last decade or so, by no means is it a new thing. Sourdough leavening has been the primary way and method of leavening bread since almost 3000 BC. So one of the reasons why it's so popular these days is simply just the taste. Because we're using a sourdough starter, it leaves a really nice sour, almost tangy flavor inside the bread. And the second reason is because of its health benefits. And that's because during the long fermentation process, the gluten proteins break down and make it a lot more digestible and also increase nutrient absorption. So it may seem like a lot of work, but it's really not. It's about 3 to 5 minutes a day for a week, and before you know it, you're gonna have a delicious sourdough starter and you'll be ready to make delicious homemade sourdough bread. So let me show you how to make it. All right, let's first start talking about the ingredients and equipment that you're gonna be needing. First and foremost, go ahead and get yourself a digital scale if you don't already have one. It's only like $10 or $15 off Amazon, just go get one. Next, let's talk about the flours that you're gonna be using. This recipe calls for whole spelt wheat flour and all-purpose flour. Now, you definitely want some sort of whole grain. I suggest either whole spelt or whole wheat rye. These two flours contain tons of wild yeast that are really good for growing your own starter. You're also going to use all-purpose flour, mainly just to cut the cost a little bit, stretch it out, so you're not using pure expensive whole wheat spelt or whole wheat rye flour. Next, go ahead and pour yourself some filtered water out of a fridge or a Brita. Just keep it in a jar, keep it at room temperature, and keep topping it up once you use it. You're going to need about 3 medium-sized oranges. We're going to juice these and use them to start the starter. Also get yourself 2 jars, preferably glass, and preferably either 500 mils or a liter. A liter is better, especially if you're going to be making a larger batch of bread. Also get yourself a thin rubber spatula. This is what we're going to be using to mix in the flour and water and the starter. So first step before we actually start mixing the starter, we're going to be mixing a pre-flour mix, which is going to be half all-purpose flour and half whole spelt flour. So measure out 400 grams of each and just whisk it together. So just transfer it to a tub, give it a label, and you'll have it for the whole week. Next, we're going to juice all of our oranges. And either put it in a jar or a squeeze bottle, just for easy access. It's time to start making the starter. So for the day 1 feeding, we're going to be using 80 grams of flour and 80 grams of orange juice at room temperature. Using your rubber spatula, just give it a mix, making sure there's no lumps, scraping down the sides of the glass, get in there real good. Once it's thoroughly mixed, put the lid on, make sure you don't screw it tight. So once the lid is on nice and loose, just pop it into a warm spot. I like using my oven that's turned off, obviously, and just the light on. Alright, for the day 2 feeding, remove it from your warm spot. And we're going to add 30 grams of the flour mix. And also 30 grams of the orange juice at room temperature. Again, give that a nice little mix, making sure there's no lumps, no dry spots on the top or the bottom of the glass. Then just pop the lid back on super loose and right back into the warm spot for another 24 hours. Alright, day 3. Today we're going to be starting to do 2 feedings a day, so one in the AM, one in the PM. Give your starter a little mix, and in a fresh glass, pour out 50 grams of your starter. You could discard the remaining. To that, we're going to add 80 grams of our flour mix and 80 grams of our orange juice at room temperature. Give that a mix. Pop the lid back on and right back into that warm spot. So about 12 hours later in the PM, hopefully you're going to be seeing some nice bubble action. If you are, that's awesome, well done. If not, don't worry, just keep at it, you are going to get it. So to this mix, just add 30 grams of our flour mix and 30 grams of filtered water now. We're done with the orange juice. If you have any left, just go ahead and drink it. So once again, give that a nice mix, lid on really loose, right back into that warm spot. So at this point, I'm going to assume that you understand the process. So day 4 and 5, it's going to be the exact same as day 3, with feedings in the morning and the evening. Once you reach day 6, it's pretty much going to be the same process, but in the morning, we're only going to use 35 grams of our starter. Again, leave that in our warm spot for 24 hours, and then we're on a day 7, which is our forever feeding. So now that our starter is nice and bubbly and active, we're only going to need 25 grams of starter for the mix. And this is what you're going to be doing every time you feed it, whether it's daily or once a week. This is it. Don't forget this. Now, I didn't say this before, but I think it's a really good idea to give your starter a name. I think it makes you a bit more accountable for it. You might even love it a bit more. My name for the starter, my starter, is Emilio, as in Emilio Estevez. And I was like, Emilio! You know what movie that's from? You know? So you're gonna know when it's done when you see a lot of bubbles, you see active rise and fall after each feed each day, and it'll smell almost fruity sour, not vinegary sour. Vinegary sour is bad for it. So if you do forget to feed it one day, maybe you're too busy, whatever, don't panic. You might find a little like black layer of liquid. That isn't good for it. It's gonna raise the pH, which you want a lower pH for sourdough starters. So what you could do is add just a half teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. That's gonna lower the pH and make the environment a lot more conducive to growing healthy microbes. So this is a 100% hydration starter. If you're having trouble getting the rise and fall and seeing bubbles, you might want to try a 90% hydration starter, which is just gonna make it feed a little bit slower. It's gonna be a bit of a thicker mixture. So yeah, give that a shot. If you're gonna bake often, like 3 to 4 times a week, I recommend just keeping it at room temperature. You would have to feed it every day, but if you're like most people and you're gonna just bake once or twice a week, you can definitely keep it in the fridge and just make sure to feed it once a week with that forever feeding. So when you do decide to use it, say once or twice a week, just take it out of the fridge, let it sit out for an hour, give it a feed, and then you're good to go. So you will find that you are throwing away quite a bit. You don't have to. There's a lot of stuff you can make with it. You could just put it in a jar, keep it in the fridge, give it to your friends. It makes a great gift, especially right now because it's really, really hard to find yeast in grocery stores. You could use it in sourdough pancakes. Pretty much any recipe that calls for yeast or baking powder, you could substitute it for. Another good tip is to just fry it in some olive oil. Maybe mix it with some fresh herbs and salt and lemon zest or cheese or whatever you want. Fry it off both sides and makes it a little great snack, or you could dip it in hummus or whatever you want. So the last thing I'm gonna mention is do not use it all in a recipe. This is just a starter. What you're gonna wanna make is a levain, which is basically equal parts starter, flour, and water. That's what you're gonna use in recipes. So do not use it all. You're always gonna leave at least 25 grams, which is in the forever feeding. But yeah, I'll be getting more into levains in my next video when I show you how to turn this sourdough starter into a beautiful loaf of sourdough bread. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. I'll get right back to you on them. If you like this video, feel like you learned something, hit that thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the next one.